Hello everyone, welcome back to AXGP. My name's Aaron and this is the Miami Grand Prix instant reaction, although it's probably not so instant because it's now Monday afternoon. Of course the race was last night in the UK. It was a 8:30 race start, which we're not used to. I mean, Australian F1 fans probably are. It's probably even later than that, to be honest, so we can suck up a late start or an early start when it's ahead, out in Australia and Japan and such places. So, yeah, not a problem. It was a late finish, but it could have been potentially later if the race had maybe been a bit more exciting with not even a yellow flag in this race. So, a safety car or a red flag, a wet race, it would have lasted, obviously, a bit longer. I'm just going to move a little bit more this side so I'm more aligned for my shorts camera. So I've got a little vertical camera, not an actual camera, but just a scene on OBS. So anything that comes up for clips, then I can just hit a shortcut button and wham, takes the clip, does a little backtrack, records the action a little while, a couple of minutes behind or before, and then that's how I can make clips. That's how I get my clips from my Formula E watch-alongs. So we had a Formula E race this weekend as well. I won't dive into that because this is an F1 show, this show specifically. So the Miami Grand Prix, I'm going to rate it a 6.5 out of 10. It wasn't as bad as we kind of feared it might be in terms of overtaking. Early stages there was a little bit of a DRS train, but especially with the way qualifying panned out, we had Max Verstappen making his way through the field, and there was that little battle. Could Perez open up enough of a gap? Could he then manage the transition between the two strategies? Could he make his strategy work for him, or would Verstappen come out on top? And as it was Verstappen that came out on top. So there was a little bit of interest there. They actually went wheel to wheel, which was quite interesting. They kept it fairly clean. They were a bit nervous about fighting each other, but there was some overtaking throughout the field. Not a hugely exciting race, but there were some interesting stories that we're going to go through shortly. So let's start with Verstappen. Of course, he made his strategy work for him. That middle part of the race on his first stint was Hamilton-esque. This is the first time we've seen Verstappen pull out that sort of aging tyre pace, where he's looked after the tyres and then he just bangs in a series of laps that are just obscenely quicker than anybody else. It's the sort of thing we've seen Hamilton do. The classic, oh, Bono, my tyres are going. Fastest lap, fastest lap, fastest lap, fastest lap. And this is the first time we've seen Verstappen do it. So he is learning, he is growing, but he was clearly the fastest driver this weekend, let's be honest. Without that Leclerc red flag in qualifying, Verstappen would have been on pole, and by a handsome margin as well, I'd guess. For Perez, though, he put himself in a position where he could go and win the race. I think starting on the front row, the pair of them would have been on mediums. I don't think Perez would have had an answer. So it would have been very interesting had Perez been able to extend a bit more of a gap. But I think the pace on the mediums late on, Verstappen was always going to do that. And weirdly, the qualifying red flag worked against Perez because it allowed Verstappen to take what was actually the optimal strategy. The thinking going into the race was start mediums, go hards in that order. But it actually turned out, because the track had been washed overnight because of the rain, that if you started on the hards and ran a bit longer, because they're more resistant, of course, then the track would come to you and you'd have the benefit of the better tyre when the track was at its best, and it wouldn't grain up quite so badly and everything that came with that. So, unfortunate for Perez, he was staring at a great opportunity to take the lead for the first time in his career of the World Drivers' Championship, but he has fallen 14 points behind. But that being said, we know from history, especially the Mercedes inter-team battle, that Hamilton-Rosberg period, that it can change. It only takes one DNF. If Verstappen has another failure like he did in Jeddah in qualifying, but that happens in the race, and Perez is on hand to scoop up the points, then there's a potential there. And we've seen Verstappen complaining on the radio about the upshifts, and they're worried about certain things. All it takes is a messy qualifying, a problem in qualifying, and Verstappen potentially gets taken out at turn one, something like that. you need a random event to slow Verstappen's progress, and that is how Rosberg got his championship. There was a lot of fortune there, but he did engineer some of that fortune. He put pressure on Hamilton in his mind games and by just constantly being there, taking every opportunity that came his way. So Perez has got to do that. Opportunities that serve themselves up, like Miami, he has to grab them with both hands. And really, he didn't do that yesterday, which was a shame, especially coming off the back of victory in Baku. That said, as I said, Verstappen was just the fastest driver over the weekend. And generally, the hard tyre starters came off better over the course of the race. So there was a tweet that Spanners from the Missed Apex podcast put out. Just going to try and dig it out here. Here we go. Drivers that started on hards. Stroll up 6 places by the end. Tsunoda up 6 places. Hamilton up 7. Verstappen up 8. Hulkenberg, Zhou and Ocon all dropped down 1. But Zhou had very little pace. The Alfa Romeo struggled this weekend. Hulkenberg, did he have a issue somewhere? I think his race pace just wasn't very good. And Ocon started out of position a little bit higher than he probably should have, and there was cars coming through. So it's mostly, it was very noisy, some building works outside. Apologies if you can hear that. Bear with me one moment. I will shut the windows and hopefully that is much better. It sounds much better to me in here. Where was I? So yeah, the hard tyre strategy really was the golden ticket in terms of strategy and the way to run the race, especially having the track been washed green on Saturday night. But a couple of drivers who really stood out for me that weren't in a Red Bull, Fernando Alonso and George Russell. And I know that's easy to say because they finished 3rd and 4th, but Alonso managed his race beautifully. He didn't get carried away with trying to chase Perez early on, and he ran quite a long way on those mediums. And obviously when Sainz went for the undercut, they accepted they were going to lose the place, so they turned the tables. And the Ferrari is generally a bit harder on its tyres, so Aston Martin this is, decided to make use of their car. It's a little bit better on the tyres, and it was easily taken back, that P3. 4 podiums to start the season in the first 5 races for Fernando Alonso. I don't think any of us expected that when it was announced that the 2-time world champion was joining the Silverstone squad last year. We kind of all laughed at it, to be honest, didn't we? So, yeah, made us all eat our words. And Alonso, he's feeling very confident about Monaco. He hasn't won now for almost 10 years to the day. So where better than Monaco to return to the winner's step of the podium. And George Russell, he really picked his battles well, managed his race. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton got out of his way, didn't hold him up. That's, a lot of people are making some remarks about that, but, Lewis has had the benefit of Bottas getting out of his way, but sometimes it is simply make the strategy work. And what you have to remember, Mercedes, they're there to win championships. So while they're not, neither driver's really going to put up too much resistance about getting out of one another's way. If they had a championship contending car, they wouldn't be maybe even requesting that. They'd just say you're on different strategies, don't get in each other's way. So, this is racing drivers we're dealing with, and Lewis is a team player, we know that. So I think people just need to take a sensible tablet and not get too carried away, because if you put Lewis in that Red Bull alongside Verstappen, then it's a completely different championship picture, and he's absolutely capable of going for the championship still. So, there's nothing there basically. But Russell made the most of that help from Hamilton, and he made his strategy work for him. So excellent job for both of them. Someone else I wanted to highlight was Kevin Magnussen for his qualifying lap on Saturday. Excellent lap. You've got to go out there and bang in the lap. That's what qualifying is all about. Go out there and put the lap on the board, because you never know what's going to happen. And this might seem a bit mean to say, but with Charles Leclerc on the track, he is capable of magic laps, but he magicked too hard this time around and found the barrier. And Magnussen was a huge benefiter of that. And it cost drivers like Verstappen, and it cost Leclerc, of course, because he'd made a mess on his first lap. So, it's peaks and troughs. It comes and it goes. As I say, it swings and roundabouts. So, loads of different adages there for you. But Kevin Magnussen, he held on for P10. That is a top effort for Haas. And it's really important that teams like Haas dig in and get those points. Because if we look at the Constructors' Championship now, because the way that the top four are dominating those top 8 positions, and I know Stroll didn't get the points today this weekend because he finished 12th. He was out of position in qualifying. But there's just so few points on offer for the rest of the pack. So you've got Red Bull way out in front on 224 points. And then Aston Martin are on 102. Mercedes on 96. Ferrari on 78. McLaren and Alpine have 14 each. 14 points each. And this is because this is with a point system that goes down to 10th place. But because the top 4 teams are all regularly finishing in those top 8 positions, there's just so few points on offer for the rest of the teams. Haas have got 8 points. Races like Australia, where there's chaos, if they'd stuck with the order at the end of lap 57, not reversed it to the restart order, Haas would have had they'd have had a podium because Sainz had the penalty. Haas would have had 15 more points than they do now. Alpine wouldn't have had any because their drivers crashed into each other. McLaren would have had some more points. AlphaTauri would have had a 4th place with Tsunoda, which would have just been incredible. And yet, because of it, they're stuck on 2 points, AlphaTauri. Williams have 1. It looks like the old days in the 80s and 90s when they had the points down to P6 and you had Ferrari, Williams and McLaren who were regularly picking up those top 6 positions. You needed one of them to drop out of the race. They inevitably did because reliability was poorer back in the 90s and the 80s. But nowadays, it's much better. Reliability is so much more improved. The cars are almost bulletproof. And that's even with all the complex systems they have on board. So there's just so little left for those teams to fight for in terms of tangible points. There's always something to fight for, but the actual points value of it is much less. Although every point now becomes even bigger and all the more important because it could make so much difference. If Norris pulls out a P5 from somewhere, just sort of some random race, he could vault McLaren way ahead of Alpine or something if they have, a poor race. And you see how it works. It's just there's so little left on offer for those teams. And talking of Alpine, a double points finish for them on a day where McLaren didn't get any points. So exactly the situation I was talking about, only Alpine have done a double points score while McLaren finished 17th and 19th. It really didn't work out for them this weekend. But a good job from Gasly and Ocon. They got a bit of a telling off in the press from the CEO of Alpine, who's not particularly happy. But he claims that they're giving them backing. I don't think that they've probably got the same level of facility as a Red Bull, a Ferrari or Mercedes, or maybe even McLaren. So, it's classic Alpine stuff, isn't it? They want everything for as little as possible. Anywhere else down the order? So Yuki Tsunoda, good solid drive from him, P11. I was disappointed with the pace of Logan Sargent because I was hoping that the Williams would be quite good for him this weekend. I tipped him for a Q2 appearance. That didn't happen. As it happens, all 3 of my predictions were absolutely spot on. I had Verstappen to win the race. I went for Perez second. And I went for Fernando Alonso to finish third. What more can you ask for? Okay, yeah, the Logan Sargent one didn't come off, but the ones that matter, absolutely. I'm like Mystic Meg over here. I don't know if you follow me on Twitter at AHGP Pod. I've retweeted today the predictions league that I'm in with a few guys who do YouTube channels across the world. And the friend of the show, Matt GP, is on there. He's the reigning champion. I've taken a leaf out of his book. Just pick Red Bull and the most likely third place finisher, which this year is probably Fernando Alonso. And you'll probably scoop the top award. So I'm actually winning that league at the moment, having had back-to-back correct predictions. So pleased with myself there. Good start to the season from me. Let's round this chat off with what was that driver parade? We love going to America, but please don't ram it down our throats. That's what it feels like. It feels like F1 are doing everything they can to make Miami this massive event that's just better than everything else. Really, you should start by making your glamour events. Of course, Monaco. It's going to be tight to do it there. But Monza, Silverstone, Albert Park. These classic races that the hardcore F1 fans are going to drag people along with. People don't enjoy this Miami being rammed down their throats and plastered everywhere. And all these celebrities that turn up and don't necessarily seem in touch with the sport, if that makes sense. They're just sort of trying to be there and be on telly, and it's disappointing in that respect. And Fernando Alonso summed it up pretty nicely, actually, in a piece on the race. He said the long and short of it was that Miami fans aren't better than any other fans across the world. Let's see if I can just find the quote here somewhere. It's there, but the point is that Miami shouldn't be singled out, or that the American races shouldn't be singled out as the ones for this special treatment. These driver parades are coming again later in the season. I hope they do them differently. I mean, it did feel like WWE, because they had like a stage and the screens in the back. At least let them choose their entrance music and have some fireworks, but don't do it 20 minutes before the start of the race. The drivers are trying to get in the zone. We've seen Martin Brundle try and get interviews with them on the grid, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. They don't want to talk. Some of the drivers are happy to talk, but drivers like Lewis and Kimi Räikkönen, I mean, he didn't want to talk to anyone, let's be honest. But Lewis doesn't want to talk. I don't think Verstappen speaks too often. I might be wrong in that. You get some drivers that just don't really fancy a chat before the race. You get some that do. So it's dependent on the driver. So this, I think, is unnecessary. Here's a quote from Fernando Alonso. He said, it needs to be uniform pre-race proceedings across the calendar. So if you're going to do it for one event, you've got to do it for all of them. And you've got to have a very simple and elegant way of doing it. So it's disappointing that F1 are feeling the need to do this with Miami, because I think people will just accept it if it's got an atmosphere, a natural atmosphere. So we don't really need it rammed down our throats. Let me know what you thought of the presentation. Let me know what you thought of the race. Rate the race as well. You can comment on the YouTube video, which is going to be on the live section of the channel, which you can find at AH Grand Prix. Or is it AHGP? I'm forgetting myself now. At AHGP, yeah. So leave your comments on there. Let me know what you thought of the race, and leave the video a like. Give it a thumbs up. That helps it get out to other people. If you're listening on the audio, of course, thank you for downloading. Thank you for taking time to listen. And you can come and follow me on my socials at AHGP Pod, as I mentioned, on Twitter, AH Grand Prix on Instagram. I think that's it. Well, and AH Grand Prix on TikTok as well. I put some stuff up there on TikTok from time to time. You can find more from me on Formula One Grid Talk podcast. And I do their race reports on F1Chronicle.com and Inside F2. yeah, you can find lots from me. You've got the driver ratings video coming out tomorrow afternoon. Hopefully something maybe Thursday if I get time. Might be a busy week at work though this week, given that it's a bank holiday weekend, so we'll be playing catch up at work this week. But if you enjoyed the video, of course, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more Grand Prix content. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again very, very soon. Until the Imola Grand Prix, be good, have fun, and I'll see you at the next race. Bye for now.